the video and subscribe to the channel. Our battle will be legendary. This day started like any other. The city was waking up, and Dobie and I were going through the morning reports. But soon, the peace was broken by a call. The dispatcher's voice was tense. There were reports of strange events at the central hospital. Patients were disappearing. Nurses spoke of a mysterious sheriff who had taken control of the institution. And the strangest part, this sheriff looked exactly like me. Dobie and I exchanged glances. This couldn't be a coincidence. I had heard stories about doppelgangers, but I never thought I would encounter one myself. We got into the car and headed to the hospital.
When we arrived, the hospital looked deserted. The large glass doors were locked, and behind them, we could only see dim, flickering lights. No patients, no staff, as if the whole place had been abandoned. Posters with Labrador's face hung on the walls, but something was off about them. His eyes looked cold, and his smile menacing. We cautiously stepped inside. The hallways were dark, the lights flickered, and the air smelled of chemicals. Cameras were everywhere, watching our every move. We had to figure out what was going on.
We moved forward carefully, scanning our surroundings. I could feel that we were being watched. Suddenly, a nurse appeared from around the corner. He looked terrified and whispered that we had to leave while we still could. According to him, the other sheriff had locked all the patients and staff in the basement and had taken over the main office. This was a challenge we couldn't ignore. We headed for the staircase leading down, but as soon as we opened the door, the sound of footsteps filled the corridor. Several guards in black uniforms with patches bearing my own emblem emerged from the shadows. They didn't look friendly.
We knew there would be no talking our way out of this. The guards lunged at us, but we were ready. Labrador threw his baton at one of them, while I used my strength to shove another straight into the wall. The rest hesitated, giving us the chance to break through to the basement. We rushed down the narrow stairs. The air grew heavier. It smelled of age and metal. Rusty pipes lined the walls. Water dripped from the ceiling. Soon, we reached a locked door. Behind it, we heard muffled voices. People were inside.
The door was secured with a massive lock. I glanced around and spotted a toolbox. Grabbing a crowbar, I swung hard at the lock. It gave way with a screech. The door burst open, revealing dozens of frightened but unharmed patients and doctors. They ran toward us, begging to be saved from the false sheriff. I told them to stay put until we dealt with the main threat. We had to find my double.
We climbed to the top floor, where the main office was located. The door was slightly ajar, and we stepped inside. There, in the center of the spacious office, stood my partner's evil twin. He looked exactly like Labrador, except for his eyes. They were dark, lifeless, like empty voids. A strange badge hung from his chest, glowing with a faint red light. He looked at us and smiled. We realized this wasn't just an imposter. This was something inhuman. He didn't speak, but his gaze made it clear he wouldn't let us leave so easily.
He attacked! I barely managed to dodge as his paw slammed into the desk, leaving a deep dent. This me was stronger than any ordinary beast. Dobie tried to sneak up behind him, but with a single motion, the doppelganger flung him aside. I had to find a way to stop him. I noticed that the badge on his chest glowed brighter whenever he attacked. Maybe that was the source of his power.
I understood what Labrador was thinking. We had to remove that badge. I lunged forward, pretending to go for his face, while Labrador leaped from above, grabbed the badge, and yanked it with all his strength. A dull crack echoed through the room. The false sheriff froze. Then his body began to tremble. Awareness flickered in his eyes before he simply dissolved into the air, leaving behind only the metallic badge, now dull and lifeless.
As soon as he vanished, the hospital began to change. The lights brightened, the cameras stopped tracking us, and the eerie silence was replaced by the sounds of voices. We knew the spell or technology that kept people in fear had been broken. Doctors and patients emerged from the basement, cautiously looking around. They were free. We knew it was over.
Once everything calmed down, we stepped outside. The sky was already lightening. Night was over. I looked at Labrador and smirked. We had seen a lot, but nothing like this before. But before we could get into the car, a new call came in. The dispatcher reported strange occurrences happening in the city again. We exchanged glances and started the engine.
The corridor trembled with each impact. Every door concealed the unknown. and we had no idea where the next attack would come from. The lights flickered, strange noises echoed from the ventilation shafts, and the scent of antiseptic mixed with something far more sinister. I could feel it. My doppelganger was toying with us, luring us into a trap. We reached the operating room. The massive metal doors slid open slowly, revealing a chamber filled with surgical instruments hanging from the ceiling and tables draped in dusty sheets. And in the center of it all, he stood, my dark reflection, wearing a twisted grin and staring with cold, empty eyes. He didn't attack immediately. He was waiting, savoring our hesitation. That's when I realized this wasn't just a copy. He could read my thoughts, anticipate my every move. This was me, stripped of conscience, devoid of principles, without mercy.
I saw Labrador freeze for a moment, assessing the situation. The double looked just like him, but something was deeply wrong. He moved like a shadow, his presence felt unnatural, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to pierce through the air itself. And then he struck. His movements were lightning fast, his attacks precise. I tried to intervene, but he dodged effortlessly, predicting my every action. It felt like a nightmare, the kind where your enemy is always faster, always ahead. We tried every technique we knew, but he countered them with ease, as if he had already seen the battle play out in his mind. The only way to win was to outsmart him, to make him believe in a false move.
I feigned exhaustion, letting my body slump as if I were giving up. For just 1 second, he smirked. And that was all we needed. At that moment, Dobie lunged forward, grabbing a surgical lamp and blasting him with blinding light. My double flinched, his expression shifting from arrogance to pure terror. That was my chance. I struck hard, and he staggered back, his eyes widening as he realized he had lost. A horrible screech filled the room as his body began to dissolve, leaving only a flickering outline of his former self. The hospital trembled as if reality itself was collapsing. We barely made it outside before the entire building shuddered and started to fade away. It had all been an illusion, a construct of darkness. But now it was gone.
When it was over, I turned to look at Labrador. He was exhausted, but victorious. We had won. Another day, another rescue. But as we walked away, a chill crept up my spine. For a split second, in the reflection of the hospital's glass doors, I swore I saw him.
As we stepped outside, the hospital behind us began to vanish, dissolving like mist into the night air. It felt like waking from a nightmare that had finally ended. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Dobie patted me on the shoulder, a silent confirmation that we had done everything we could. But something gnawed at me. I knew my double was gone, but was he truly gone? His smirk, his movements, they had been too real to simply disappear. Questions swirled in my mind, but for now, there were no answers.
I glanced around. The city carried on as usual, unaware that just moments ago, we had battled an entity that could have destroyed not only us, but the very fabric of reality itself. I wanted to say something reassuring, but before I could, the dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio. Another call, another nightmare. I sighed, exchanging a knowing look with Labrador. Looked like rest wasn't in our near future. We jumped into the car and headed toward the next anomaly.
I drove through the dark city streets, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the hospital. In the rearview mirror, for a brief moment, I saw a familiar face. My face, but with that same sinister smirk. I blinked quickly, and it disappeared. I wasn't sure if it was just exhaustion or something more. Maybe my double hadn't disappeared completely. Maybe he was just lying in wait, biding his time to return.
When we arrived at the next call, the dark building of the city library loomed before us, shrouded in thick fog.
Guys, help me out. Smash that like button and leave a comment on the video. Hey everyone, it's me, Sheriff Labrador. Today we're going to face different challenges and parkour levels to save people from Evil Steve from Minecraft, who has captured everyone and keeps them in fear. Dobie, say hello.
Hi friends, it's me, Dobie. And as Labrador said, today we'll be facing trials and protecting people from Evil Steve from Minecraft. It's not going to be an easy mission, but I'm sure we can handle it, right, Labrador?
The first challenge will be a parkour over tin blocks that look like ventilation shafts. Dobie, you ready?
Yes, Labrador, that challenge was way too easy. Let's move on to the next one.
In the second challenge, we need to press a button to make platforms appear that we have to jump across. The most important thing, don't fall.
Oh, Labrador, these challenges are too easy so far. I wonder what's coming next.
In the third challenge, we have to run away from Steve from Minecraft, but before that, we need to press a button. Otherwise, the vent won't open and Steve will catch us.
Run, Labrador, he's catching up to us.
Phew, Dobie, that was intense. Luckily, we managed to escape him, a serious opponent.
I agree, Labrador, but let's not relax. We need to keep going.
After exiting the ventilation, we need to grab a shovel and dig our way down. That's where the next challenge awaits us.
In the next challenge, we have to parkour over a huge chasm filled with boiling lava. Just don't fall in.
Whew, we made it, Dobie. Now we have to dodge a giant rolling boulder heading right at us. Just a bit more, and we cleared this level.
Labrador, oh no! Steve is back again, and he wants to catch us. If we don't turn the wheel to open the door, he's going to catch us.
This day started like any other. The city was waking up, and Dobie and I were going through the morning reports. But soon, the peace was broken by a call. The dispatcher's voice was tense. There were reports of strange events at the central hospital. Patients were disappearing. Nurses spoke of a mysterious sheriff who had taken control of the institution. And the strangest part, this sheriff looked exactly like me. Dobie and I exchanged glances. This couldn't be a coincidence. I had heard stories about doppelgangers, but I never thought I would encounter one myself. We got into the car and headed to the hospital.
When we arrived, the hospital looked deserted. The large glass doors were locked, and behind them, we could only see dim, flickering lights. No patients, no staff, as if the whole place had been abandoned. Posters with Labrador's face hung on the walls, but something was off about them. His eyes looked cold, and his smile menacing. We cautiously stepped inside. The hallways were dark, the lights flickered, and the air smelled of chemicals. Cameras were everywhere, watching our every move. We had to figure out what was going on.
We moved forward carefully, scanning our surroundings. I could feel that we were being watched. Suddenly, a nurse appeared from around the corner. He looked terrified and whispered that we had to leave while we still could. According to him, the other sheriff had locked all the patients and staff in the basement and had taken over the main office. This was a challenge we couldn't ignore. We headed for the staircase leading down, but as soon as we opened the door, the sound of footsteps filled the corridor. Several guards in black uniforms with patches bearing my own emblem emerged from the shadows. They didn't look friendly.
We knew there would be no talking our way out of this. The guards lunged at us, but we were ready. Labrador threw his baton at one of them, while I used my strength to shove another straight into the wall. The rest hesitated, giving us the chance to break through to the basement. We rushed down the narrow stairs. The air grew heavier. It smelled of age and metal. Rusty pipes lined the walls. Water dripped from the ceiling. Soon, we reached a locked door. Behind it, we heard muffled voices. People were inside.
The door was secured with a massive lock. I glanced around and spotted a toolbox. Grabbing a crowbar, I swung hard at the lock. It gave way with a screech. The door burst open, revealing dozens of frightened but unharmed patients and doctors. They ran toward us, begging to be saved from the false sheriff. I told them to stay put until we dealt with the main threat. We had to find my double.
We climbed to the top floor, where the main office was located. The door was slightly ajar, and we stepped inside. There, in the center of the spacious office, stood my partner's evil twin. He looked exactly like Labrador, except for his eyes. They were dark, lifeless, like empty voids. A strange badge hung from his chest, glowing with a faint red light. He looked at us and smiled. We realized this wasn't just an imposter. This was something inhuman. He didn't speak, but his gaze made it clear he wouldn't let us leave so easily.
He attacked. I barely managed to dodge as his paw slammed into the desk, leaving a deep dent. This me was stronger than any ordinary beast. Dobie tried to sneak up behind him, but with a single motion, the doppelganger flung him aside. I had to find a way to stop him. I noticed that the badge on his chest glowed brighter whenever he attacked. Maybe that was the source of his power.
I understood what Labrador was thinking. We had to remove that badge. I lunged forward, pretending to go for his face, while Labrador leaped from above, grabbed the badge, and yanked it with all his strength. A dull crack echoed through the room. The false sheriff froze. Then his body began to tremble. Awareness flickered in his eyes before he simply dissolved into the air, leaving behind only the metallic badge, now dull and lifeless.
As soon as he vanished, the hospital began to change. The lights brightened, the cameras stopped tracking us, and the eerie silence was replaced by the sounds of voices. We knew the spell or technology that kept people in fear had been broken. Doctors and patients emerged from the basement, cautiously looking around. They were free. We knew it was over.
Once everything calmed down, we stepped outside. The sky was already lightening. Night was over. I looked at Labrador and smirked. We had seen a lot, but nothing like this before. But before we could get into the car, a new call came in. The dispatcher reported strange occurrences happening in the city again. We exchanged glances and started the engine.
Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Our battle will be legendary. The corridor trembled with each impact. Every door concealed the unknown, and we had no idea where the next attack would come from. The lights flickered, strange noises echoed from the ventilation shafts, and the scent of antiseptic mixed with something far more sinister. I could feel it. My doppelganger was toying with us, luring us into a trap. We reached the operating room. The massive metal doors slid open slowly, revealing a chamber filled with surgical instruments hanging from the ceiling and tables draped in dusty sheets. And in the center of it all, he stood, my dark reflection, wearing a twisted grin and staring with cold, empty eyes. He didn't attack immediately. He was waiting, savoring our hesitation. That's when I realized this wasn't just a copy. He could read my thoughts, anticipate my every move. This was me, stripped of conscience, devoid of principles, without mercy.
I saw Labrador freeze for a moment, assessing the situation. The double looked just like him, but something was deeply wrong. He moved like a shadow, his presence felt unnatural, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to pierce through the air itself. And then he struck. His movements were lightning fast, his attacks precise. I tried to intervene, but he dodged effortlessly, predicting my every action. It felt like a nightmare, the kind where your enemy is always faster, always ahead. We tried every technique we knew, but he countered them with ease, as if he had already seen the battle play out in his mind. The only way to win was to outsmart him, to make him believe in a false move.
The corridor trembled with each impact. Every door concealed the unknown, and we had no idea where the next attack would come from. The lights flickered, strange noises echoed from the ventilation shafts, and the scent of antiseptic mixed with something far more sinister. I could feel it. My doppelganger was toying with us, luring us into a trap. We reached...
I saw Labrador freeze for a moment, assessing the situation. The double looked just like him, but something was deeply wrong. He moved like a shadow, his presence felt unnatural, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to pierce through the air itself. And then he struck. His movements were lightning fast, his attacks precise. I tried to intervene, but he dodged effortlessly, predicting my
Every day in our city starts differently. Sometimes it's peaceful, patrolling the streets, handling complaints, rescuing kittens from trees. And sometimes it turns into a real nightmare. Today was, without a doubt, one of the worst. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when the radio crackled sharply, and the dispatcher's voice came through with such urgency that my morning drowsiness disappeared instantly. Something strange was happening at the Central City Hospital. Witnesses reported eerie sounds, screams, and laughter. Yes, genuine, sinister laughter echoing through the hospital speakers. As I processed this information, the door to the station burst open and Dobie rushed in. He was holding a box of donuts, but the moment he saw my face, he set it down on the table, forgetting about breakfast. I briefly explained the situation, and within minutes, we were racing toward the scene in our police car.
When we arrived, it was immediately clear. This wasn't a normal call. All the hospital windows were covered with black curtains, and on the glass of the main entrance hung a strange poster. A perfect smile is the key to life. Below the words was a terrifying grin with perfectly straight but unnaturally sharp teeth. A crowd had gathered outside. People murmured in fear, some trying to call their loved ones inside. But no one answered. The hospital seemed like a sealed-off world. one that no one could enter or leave. As soon as we approached the doors, a voice boomed from the speakers. Deep, hoarse, but with fake cheerfulness. Welcome to the Center for the Perfect Smile, Sheriffs. We've been expecting you. Then, with a loud click, the doors groaned open.
Usually, when doors open by themselves, it's a sign you should stay away. But we had no choice. There could be injured people, hostages, or worse inside. We stepped in. Inside, an eerie silence reigned. The dim lights flickered, making it feel like we had entered an abandoned clinic. Medical posters hung everywhere, but their messages were distorted. Everyone must smile. Don't be afraid, this won't hurt. Your teeth belong to me. I took a step forward and suddenly felt something sticky under my paws. Looking down, I saw the floor covered in a substance resembling toothpaste, but with a strong chemical smell.
The hallway stretched forward, leading us deeper into the hospital. We could hear faint noises, like whispering behind the walls, but too indistinct to understand. A shiver ran down my spine. Suddenly, a man in a white coat dashed around the corner. He was gasping for breath, his eyes filled with terror. A doctor! He grabbed my arm, squeezing it so tightly that I knew he was on the edge of panic. Stop him! Stop him before it's too late! He wheezed. But before we could ask him anything, a deafening alarm blared, and the doctor convulsed as if struck by electricity. I turned just in time to see a mechanical arm extend from the wall, ending in a long, gleaming needle. It stabbed into the doctor's neck. He froze, then slowly collapsed to the floor. We stepped back. Disobedient patients shouldn't be wandering around the hospital, the voice from the speakers sneered.
It was clear now. Everything here was automated, and one person was controlling this madness. The twisted dentist who had taken over the hospital. We moved forward, passing rooms filled with horrifying tools. In one of them, a dental chair stood surrounded by mechanical arms, each holding sharp instruments. X-rays lined the walls, but they weren't normal. Every jaw on them had elongated, pointed teeth, as if someone had deliberately altered them. Dobie muttered a curse under his breath. We needed to find the head doctor, or someone from the staff who could explain what was happening.
We reached the main hall, where a massive statue stood in the center of a tooth, a giant, gleaming human tooth, enlarged dozens of times. Its surface shone as if it were made of real enamel. Then he appeared. A loud screech echoed from the speakers, followed by an eerily cheerful voice. Oh, finally! I've been waiting for you, sheriffs. We turned and saw a figure emerging from the shadows, tall and thin, dressed in a long white coat, yet moving with an unnerving puppet-like fluidity. His yellow-lensed glasses reflected the dim light, and his mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. Dr. Pearl at your service? Ready for your checkup?
I clenched my teeth and stepped forward, but suddenly the walls began to shift. The floor trembled, and the giant tooth statue started splitting open, revealing a deep, dark shaft beneath it. You won't leave until your treatment is complete. That's when I realized it was a trap. We were standing in the center of the room, surrounded by walls that were slowly closing in.
We had little time. I spotted a control panel near the door and rushed toward it. At the last second, I managed to hack the system, and the walls stopped moving. But that was just the beginning. Dr. Pearl clapped his hands, and figures began emerging from the shaft beneath the statue. Patients, but twisted. Their mouths were frozen in wide, grotesque smiles, and in their hands they clutched massive metallic toothbrushes. We braced ourselves for the final battle.
When the patients began crawling out of the shaft, their mouths unnaturally stretched into wide grins, clutching massive metallic toothbrushes in their hands, I realized they weren't just hypnotized hostages. Their movements were jerky, mechanical, as if someone was controlling them like puppets. Dr. Pearl stood off to the side, arms crossed over his chest, watching with pleasure. The flickering lights cast his elongated shadow on the walls, making him seem even taller. Dobie and I exchanged glances. We had to come up with something fast before we were completely surrounded. I was the first to charge forward, ducking under the massive toothbrush swung by one of the patients. He smashed it into the floor, shattering it into pieces, but immediately, as if on command, two more lunged at me, aiming their strange weapons at my head.
I knew Pearl was controlling them, but how? We needed to find the source of the signal. I blocked a toothbrush strike, kicking the nearest patient's arm. He flinched but kept moving, as if he couldn't feel pain. Then I noticed it. Each of them had a small metallic box embedded in the skin at the back of their necks. I understood. These were control devices. Labrador was fighting off 3 at once, while I jumped at the closest patient and ripped the box from his neck. A strange crackling noise sounded, and he instantly collapsed to the floor like a broken toy. "They're connected to a system!" I shouted. "We have to disable the main transmitter!" Dr. Pearl laughed, his teeth gleaming under the flickering lights.
I knocked one of the patients aside and quickly scanned the room. There had to be a control center somewhere in this hall. That's when I noticed a metallic panel on the wall, standing out among the hospital's old-fashioned decor. Without hesitation, I yanked out my baton and hurled it straight at the panel. A loud screech followed, sparks flying in all directions. For a second, the patients froze, but then they started moving again. The transmitter had to be somewhere else. Pearl sighed and took a step forward. "What a disappointment, sheriffs. I thought you were smarter."
And then I saw it. Under his lab coat, something faintly glowed on his chest. A barely noticeable green light. I remembered how old radio transmitters worked. Sometimes, to distribute a signal across an entire system, the host had to be at the center of it. That could only mean one thing. Pearl himself was the main transmitter. I signaled Labrador and pretended to attack from the front. Pearl smirked, but in that moment, Labrador lunged from the side, pulled out a taser, and pressed it directly to the evil dentist's chest. Electricity surged through his body, and he convulsed like a mannequin on broken springs. At that moment, all the patients around us froze, then slowly began to collapse to the floor. Their hands no longer gripped the oversized toothbrushes, and their faces, now free of those grotesque smiles, showed only exhaustion and confusion.
Dr. Pearl fell to his knees, his pristine lab coat now crumpled and stained. You don't understand?" He gasped, his voice suddenly uncertain. I grabbed him by the collar. "We understand just fine. You wanted to turn everyone into your test subjects, but your hospital is closed for good."
As we cuffed him, the hospital doors finally unlocked, and our colleagues stormed inside. Doctors and patients began to regain consciousness, slowly realizing what had happened. I glanced at the giant tooth statue. It now looked utterly ridiculous. "You know," I said to Labrador, "after this, I definitely won't be visiting the dentist anytime soon." He chuckled. "Just don't forget to brush your teeth." We escorted Pearl outside. The setting sun painted the sky in dark hues. It was over. Another insane case, closed. But just as we got into the car, the radio crackled to life. A new call. Labrador glanced at me, sighed, and started the engine.
Save us, friends! Watch the video until the end so we can escape from here. Hello, everyone. So, are you ready to defeat all these running heads? Today, we're going to escape from the running head.
Yes, hey guys, but this won't be easy because there are tough challenges ahead. Please give us a like. It will really help us. And watch until the end so we can defeat everyone.
Exactly, Dobie. But since we're sheriffs, nothing will scare us. Except, well, I'll tell you about that at the end, because everyone has their secrets.
Look, the first running head, but it's very slow, so we can ignore it. Ah, this is easy. But what's ahead of us?
Don't lose vigilance. There might be a lot of traps around.
This maze is simple. There's no ceiling, so we can peek and see where to go.
Great. Behind this barrier, they won't catch us.
I want to see how smart they are.
That was risky, but I love taking risks too. It's part of our job.
Yes, the key is always to plan your actions and have a backup plan for unexpected situations.
Look, they're getting closer. We need to stay alert.
They move strangely and are now stuck together. It looks like they're kissing. Weird.
I can't even imagine how they walk without legs.
Look, a giant head is blocking the way to the finish. We need to find a way to bypass it.
I see. This looks like a focus test. We took these when we became sheriffs.
There are 3 heads in a narrow passage. We'll have to use parkour skills.
Oh no, they're kissing again. Let's turn away so we don't get distracted. Maybe they're doing this on purpose to confuse us.
It looks like that giant head, but fortunately, it's slow and not very smart. We'll easily outsmart it.
Seems like we're close to the end of the first stage. It's just around the corner. Oh, there was a trap here. That's what happens when you lose focus. But since we're not on a mission, it's not scary. Play for fun, guys. You're right. This ladder leads to the portal to the next stage. Let's go.
Looks like we're in some wooden house. There are 2 doors. Let's go left.
He's standing with his back to us, though he doesn't have a back. I think he's facing us.
We need to slip through quickly while he's distracted by the other hole in the wall.
He's standing with his back to us, though he doesn't have a back. I think he's facing us. I don't even know. Oh, I wanted to say that I don't know where to go. Why is he standing? This is unpredictable.
I think this is designed to scare us. Where to go? I'm not sure. Since the monitor can't emit smells, we can't rely on instincts, so we're going blindly. The key is not to turn around so we don't end up back at the start.
Great. We've reached the checkpoint. We're halfway through the maze. Checkpoints aren't placed for no reason. There may be danger ahead.
Oh, let's quickly slip through the gap before that head wakes up. Another checkpoint, great.
This is a new element of the challenge. We need to turn at the right time so the head doesn't catch us in its mouth.
Oh my God, we got distracted and missed the turn. It's okay. We got the point and we'll quickly go back. Remember, Lab, when we used to play horror games as kids?
Of course, those evenings with popcorn and the old computer. We cursed that creepy monastery so many times.
I wonder how that influenced our work now.
I think it taught us not to panic in the dark. Remember when we first faced that case in the abandoned mine?
Yes, all those sounds and rustling. It felt like something out of an old game.
But thanks to our childhood obsession, we stayed calm and figured it out. No mysticism, just work.
And strangely, it still helps us. I'm glad we spent those horror-filled evenings together.
Me too, Dobie. In our world, every day feels like a horror movie, but we're always ready.
We're on stage 3. Let's keep going. Looks like another maze.
I hope it will be more interesting and challenging. The first one was boring.
It was just preparing us. There are many new mobs at this level. They scared me. Terrifying.
An amazing story took place in our animal town, one that began with very strange events. It all started when we noticed a strange glow in the sky. It didn't look like a regular meteor, and we immediately realized that something was happening. Soon, much to our surprise, aliens appeared from this glow. They were quite unusual. Imagine, they looked like running heads from a Roblox game. These creatures wore bright costumes and were full of enthusiasm.
When they landed, they declared that they didn't come to harm our city, but to become our fans. They loved everything related to our adventures, our city, and they even started copying us, recording our actions and movements just in case. We thought it was just a joke, but when they began setting up fan clubs and running ads about us on their planet, we realized something was wrong.
And that's when the most interesting part began. The aliens told us that they weren't just fans, but that they actually wanted to take over our city and turn it into their fan zone. They were ready to build monuments, organize festivals, and take all of us to their planet to make us symbols of their culture. But that wouldn't be very convenient for us, right? We like our city here, and we weren't planning to move to some foreign place that doesn't suit us.
And so, when we realized that the aliens were seriously determined, we decided to take action. You can't just stop them because they weren't just huge fans. They were also very powerful beings. We needed to come up with something special. And then Labrador and I came up with a brilliant idea. We decided to create our clones and send them to the alien planet. The clones would essentially be our doubles, entertaining the aliens and showing them that our place on Earth is our home, not their planet.
We turned to our best engineers and inventors, and they helped us create unique cloning devices. With this technology, we created several copies of ourselves, identical to us, but of course, without our memories and personal lives. We sent them to the alien planet. The clones began to work for the aliens, entertaining them and showing them how to properly set up a fan club and, most importantly, how to live in peace and harmony.
When the aliens saw these doubles, they were so amazed that they couldn't believe their eyes. Our clones did everything they were asked to do, and even more. Soon, the aliens realized that their love for our city didn't need to be so obsessive. They understood that we love our city and want to stay here with our friends and family.
In the end, the aliens agreed that our city would stay on Earth and they would return to their planet. We offered them to stay as our friends, not fans, but real friends. As a token of gratitude, they gave us some interesting technologies and promised not to interfere in our affairs anymore. They even built a fan zone for themselves, where they could read about our city and follow our adventures without disturbing us.
And so, the animal city was safe again, and the aliens no longer tried to take us over. everything ended peacefully, and we all returned to our usual activities. We learned that it's important to respect each other's boundaries, even if someone adores you. And the clones who helped us buy time went down in history as our loyal helpers.
We're going to tell you a story that happened in our town. It all started with rumors. Someone had settled in the forest not far from the town, and everything that people brought there was disappearing. At first, small things, then bigger items. The townspeople started to panic, but Dobie and I decided that it was probably just a rumor. After all, there's always an explanation for everything.
But when Mr. Bobby's toys disappeared, we realized we needed to act. I wasn't too scared, but something wasn't right. Labrador and I decided to check the forest, even though we didn't believe in the supernatural. As soon as we approached the forest, I felt that something strange was going on. It was eerily quiet, and suddenly I heard a strange sound, like something moving on the ground. And then, from the shadows, a strange figure emerged.
I was ready for anything, but this was something I wasn't expecting. The shadow was tall with long arms, and its eyes glowed like two fires in the night. Dobie and I froze, and it was clear that this wasn't an ordinary creature. We started moving forward, but everything around us seemed wrong. The forest became unnaturally silent, and there were no rustling leaves, no sounds from the animals. We soon reached the center of the forest, where there was a strange tree, and that's where everything had been happening.
Under the tree, we found a strange hole. Inside was an old book. Everything around was covered in dust, and the pages of the book were charred. We realized that this wasn't just any book, but an ancient artifact linked to dark forces. Inside were descriptions of rituals that allowed the opening of gateways between worlds. And that's when we understood that something dark was beginning to seep into our world.
Suddenly, we heard that same rustling sound again. Something was moving in our direction. It was the same shadow. We couldn't wait any longer. Grabbing the book, we began to read aloud, trying to find a way to stop it. At that moment, the shadow started approaching at incredible speed, but there was no turning back. We began to chant the incantation, and right before us, the light started to dim, and then the shadow disappeared.
The darkness that had enveloped the forest began to dissipate. When we returned to the town, the townspeople were in shock over what had happened, but we calmed them down. The forest was quiet again, but we knew we had to stay prepared. We don't fully understand what we encountered, but one thing was clear. The danger was real.
Well, friends, our battle with that huge running head is over. But that's not all. Soon we'll tackle the next parts. This was a real challenge, and I'm sure we were lucky to find the exit in time. Just look at this massive chaos it left behind.
Yes, Labrador, it was a real nightmare. The entire map was full of traps, and we barely managed to escape from it. But in the end, we showed that we're not afraid of such challenges. Even though the head was constantly chasing us, we found the strength and bravely overcame all the obstacles.
The day started as usual, with a strong cup of coffee and another morning briefing. I was going through reports when my radio suddenly blared with an urgent alarm. The dispatcher's voice was shaking. Something unimaginable had happened at the Rainbow Meadow Kindergarten. Eyewitnesses reported that the Sprunkies had suddenly appeared in the center of the building and were now holding it under siege. Inside were teachers and children. Dobie had just entered the station, holding a box of donuts in his paws. But as soon as he heard the call, he immediately set it aside. This was an emergency.
When we arrived at the scene, we were met with a sight straight out of a horror movie. The Sprunkies, eerie with elongated snouts, soulless eyes, and chaotic movements, filled the entire playground. They swayed back and forth, emitting strange sounds, and looked as if they were about to lunge at anyone who came too close. Panicked adults were running in all directions. Chaos had already engulfed the building, and we knew there was no time to waste.
The first thing we needed to do was find out if there were any injured people inside. As we approached, one of the teachers informed us that all the children had barricaded themselves in the playroom on the second floor. They were scared but safe for the moment. The only problem was that they couldn't get out. The main entrance was blocked by the Sprunkies, and fire had cut off the emergency exit. The creatures were watching our every move and clearly weren't going to let us through without a fight.
We decided to split up. Labrador would distract the monsters while I tried to get inside through a window. The Sprunkies tilted their heads as Labrador pulled out a megaphone and turned the siren to maximum volume. The loud noise made them flinch. They turned toward him and began twitching rapidly. their movements growing more erratic. At that moment, I ran to the window, pulled out a crowbar, and struck the glass with all my might.
The Sprunkies saw me as a threat, and one of them lunged forward, jerking and writhing strangely. I barely managed to jump back as it reached for me with its long arms. Meanwhile, Dobie was already climbing inside. I had to hold these monsters back, or they could break into the building. I spotted a fire hydrant nearby and rushed toward it without hesitation. I needed to open it and try to douse the Sprunkies with water.
Inside the building, the atmosphere was eerie. Faint rustling sounds filled the air, and the shadows of the Sprunkies flickered behind the windows. The children huddled in a corner, trembling with fear. I promised them I'd get them out and told them to hold hands. We started making our way to the exit, but suddenly there was a loud creak. A ceiling beam collapsed, blocking our path. We needed to find another way out.
I struck the hydrant several times with my baton, and a powerful stream of water burst out. The Sprunkies shrieked as their bodies twitched violently. They recoiled, as if the water was causing them pain. I quickly scanned my surroundings, searching for a way to finally subdue them. Then an idea struck me. I could use the nearby construction cranes to trap the monsters.
We found a passage leading to an old storage room. There was a back door, but it was jammed shut. The children huddled together in fear as I tried to break it open with my shoulder. The smoke was getting thicker, the air hotter. We were running out of time. I grabbed a metal pipe and used it as a lever. The door finally gave way and we rushed outside.
The Sprunkies started moving toward us, their motions becoming sharper and more erratic. This was our last chance. I sprinted toward the construction crane, jumped into the cabin, and yanked the controls. A massive net filled with steel beams swayed in the air. The Sprunkies moved chaotically, but I had timed it perfectly. I released the load right on top of them. The beams struck their elongated bodies, knocking them down.
I saw the children running into the arms of their relieved parents, but the Sprunkies were still moving, albeit slowly. They struggled to rise, their limbs writhing. At that moment, specialists in anomalous creatures arrived. They used a special energy field, and within minutes, the monsters froze in place.
We stood there, catching our breath, watching as the specialists loaded the Sprunkies into special containers to transport them to a laboratory for further study. The children were safe, the firefighters had put out the flames, and the teachers couldn't stop thanking us. Dobie and I exchanged a glance. Another case closed.
As everything settled down, I looked at the spot where the Sprunkies had stood just moments ago. This was one of the toughest challenges we had ever faced, but the most important thing was that no one got hurt. We had done our job. And now I think it's time to head back to the station and finally finish those donuts I left behind before this crazy day began.
But just as we were about to leave, the dispatcher came through again. Another call, another danger. It looked like our day was just getting started. As soon as we arrived at the station, it was clear. Something was seriously wrong. The lights flickered, strange scraping sounds echoed from deep within the tunnel, and passengers whispered nervously, casting uneasy glances into the darkness. The train hadn't moved, and the conductor wasn't responding.
We cautiously descended, illuminating our path with flashlights. An eerie silence filled the air, broken only by the distant dripping of water. As we approached the train, a long metallic creak rang out. The doors of the carriage slowly slid open, even though no one had touched them.
We stepped inside and immediately sensed we were not alone. The dim light from our flashlights revealed rusty seats, claw marks on the walls, and dark stains on the floor. Then, at the far end of the carriage, I saw movement. A jerking, unnatural silhouette, frozen between reality and nightmare.
It was them, the Sprunkies, but in a different form. Their bodies merged with the shadows, stretching into unnatural shapes. They hovered in the air, watching us without eyes, yet with an unmistakable awareness. At that moment, I realized running wasn't an option. We would have to fight again.
One of the Sprunkies moved forward, its figure twitching in sharp, unnatural jerks, like an old broken film. I pulled out my taser and fired at the approaching creature. The electric shock coursed through its body, making it waver, but it didn't disappear. We needed another way.
I spotted the control panel near the doors. If we could restart the system, maybe the emergency lighting would help us. But before I could reach it, one of the Sprunkies lunged at me, forcing me to retreat. Its long arms stretched toward me, and a rasping sound like a whisper escaped from its throat.
I grabbed a fire extinguisher near the door and sprayed a stream of gas directly at the sprunkies. They hissed and recoiled. Apparently, carbon dioxide affected them just like water had before. Dobie took advantage of the moment and flipped the switch. A blinding light flooded the carriage, and the sprunkies froze as if paralyzed.
They began to dissolve, fading into the air, leaving behind only the sharp scent of metal. We found the train conductor unconscious, but he was slowly coming to. We evacuated the passengers, and the specialists who arrived later detected strange interference in the metro's electrical system.
Hello, friends. It's me, Sheriff Labrador, and today we're taking on a series of challenges together with my friend Dobie.
Hey, everyone! Yeah, just like Labrador said, we're playing a challenge map in Roblox. The mode is called Escape from the Dungeon.
Our first challenge is parkour on barrels over a huge lava pit. Dobie, are you ready?
Yes, Labrador, I'm ready. Phew, we made it through this challenge. Now we move on to the next one. We have to jump across wooden planks, but the most important thing is not to fall.
Dobie, how do you like this mode? I really enjoy it. The harder the challenges, the more I start loving this game.
I agree, Labrador. This map is amazing. Very well designed and detailed.
Let's move on to the next challenge. We have to run under giant spikes in time. If we don't make it, we lose.
Labrador, this is terrifying. One wrong step and it's game over.
Don't worry, Dobie. We'll get through it for sure.
We did it, Labrador, but we can't relax. There are even harder challenges ahead.
Now we're climbing up a ladder and entering a strange room filled with chests. We need to open them all and find the key to the door.
Oh, Labrador! We have to find the key to escape from this scary room.
I've opened so many chests, but still no key. Dobie, how about you?
Labrador, come here. I found the key.
Hooray, we're out!
On the next level, there are invisible traps under our feet. Labrador, we have to get through this level on our first try.
We're slowly making our way through, carefully jumping over the invisible traps.
Yes, we cleared this level on the first try. Teamwork makes anything possible.
Now we have to climb down giant wooden beams, but we can't fall. There's poisonous water below, and if we fall, we lose.
I agree, Labrador. We can't afford to lose now.
Dobie, we're so close to beating this level.
Yes, Labrador. We're almost there, and we did it. We're moving on to the next challenge. Let's grab the checkpoint. Up next is parkour on rocks, but if we fall, we'll get crushed and lose.
Oh no, Dobie, we fell. Is this the end?
Don't worry, Labrador. That's why we took the checkpoint. We have another chance.
Yes, we did it, and we're moving forward.
We finished the parkour, and a boulder pushed us straight into the next challenge.
Now we have to jump from rock to rock at super speed. Below us is a huge sea of acid. If we fall, we lose.
Phew, Labrador, we made it through this level.
Save us. Guys, watch this video until the end. Like it, and leave a comment, and you'll save us. Hello, friends. Today, Dobie and I have found ourselves in a real predicament. We've been trapped by the evil Karen, who believes she's the only beautiful person on Earth. Her house is a fortress filled with traps and secrets. We have to work together to escape. Karen is so wealthy that her house is packed with all sorts of gadgets she uses to keep us captive.
Hi, everyone. Yes, Labrador is right. Karen is a real villain. Her beauty is deceptive. Behind it lies a cold heart. She trapped us and wants to keep us here forever to be the only beauty around. Her house is indeed luxurious, but the atmosphere is sinister. You can feel her presence in every corner. Everything around reminds us of her vanity and pursuit of perfection.
Every room in her house is a separate challenge. We have to work together to activate hidden mechanisms and platforms that allow us to move forward. Teamwork is essential here. I press a button and a path opens up for Dobie. Then he does the same for me. Step by step, we advance despite all the obstacles Karen throws at us.
This really requires complete synchronization and trust in each other. Only then can we overcome these challenges. In some places, the house feels like a maze where it's easy to get lost. But we won't give up because our goal is to escape and stop Karen. Her control over this place makes her even more dangerous. But I believe we can handle it together.
Moreover, Karen's house is filled with mirrors and reflections. She obviously adores her reflection and thinks it gives her more power. But we must not succumb to her influence. Instead, we use it as a clue to find hidden exits or keys. Every action she takes against us becomes a new opportunity for us to find a way out.
The rooms where she keeps her treasures and jewelry are particularly interesting. These halls look dazzling, but they hide the most dangerous traps. Karen doesn't want anyone to steal her jewels, so she has done everything to guard them. However, in these halls, we can also find important items that will help us escape. We need to be extremely careful and attentive.
We understand that at the end of this journey, we will face a final showdown with Karen herself. She will probably defend her kingdom to the last, but we have no choice but to fight. We know that defeating her is the only way to regain our freedom. Karen may be strong and cunning, but our friendship and unity give us the strength to move forward.
We hope for your support, friends. With each step, we get closer to freedom and victory over Karen. This path is not easy, but we believe we can overcome all the obstacles. Your faith in us helps us keep going. Don't forget to subscribe and like.
Recently, something completely unusual happened in our town. I guess I should start from the very beginning. One morning, Madame Karen, the most beautiful lady I had ever seen, came to visit us. She appeared in the square, and her dazzling beauty mesmerized everyone around. It seemed like no one could resist her charms. Soon, we noticed that people started acting strangely. They began bringing her jewels and the most delicious candies, as if they were under some kind of hypnosis.
It was truly incredible. Every day, we saw the townspeople lining up to give Madame Karen their most valuable possessions. Labrador and I immediately realized that something wasn't right. Madame Karen didn't just appear in our town for no reason. She was clearly using her beauty to manipulate the townspeople.
We began an investigation. At first, everything seemed too tangled. No one could explain why they were so eager to please Madame Karen. Professor Owl, our old friend and sage, advised us to pay attention to the behavior of the townspeople. She suggested that Madame Karen might have been using some sort of method to control them. We decided to keep a closer watch on her.
One night, we decided to follow Madame Karen. She lived in a large mansion on the outskirts of town. We sneaked inside and discovered that there was a huge mirror ball in her room. It was a device that emitted hypnotic waves, controlling the will of anyone who came under its influence. We realized that we needed to turn it off immediately.
We came up with a plan. I took on the task of distracting Madame Karen while Dobie disabled the device. At the moment she started suspecting something was wrong, I engaged her in conversation. It was difficult because her beauty could really drive anyone mad, but I knew I couldn't give in to her charms.
Meanwhile, I made my way to the mirror ball. Turning it off wasn't easy. It was protected by a complex system, but thanks to our skills and experience in situations like this, I found a weak spot. I quickly dismantled the mechanism and shut off the hypnotic waves. As soon as the ball stopped emitting waves, all the townspeople under Madame Karen's influence started coming to their senses.
Madame Karen lost her power. Without the hypnotic device, her charms no longer worked. The townspeople began to realize what had happened, and they were filled with gratitude for our intervention. We arrested Madame Karen and handed her over to justice. She could no longer harm anyone in our town.
This story taught us a lot. External beauty doesn't always reflect true intentions. It's important to always stay alert and not be swayed by first impressions. Labrador and I did everything we could to protect our town and its people, and in the end, justice prevailed. Now, our town is peaceful and calm again. Everyone has returned to their usual routines, and there is no longer any fear of someone manipulating us.
Ah, dear subscribers, something unexpected and, frankly, quite strange happened in our town. Let me start from the beginning. One fine day, we noticed that all the most beautiful boys and girls started gathering together. At first, it was just small groups, but then the situation started spiraling out of control. These young residents of the town, all possessing incredible beauty, suddenly began to unite. It was like magic. The more they came together, the stronger and more attractive they became. And when their powers reached their peak, from their union emerged none other than the boss of beauty. I can tell you, it was something truly out of the ordinary.
And it really became a problem. The boss of beauty wasn't just beautiful, he was huge, powerful, and as I discovered, not exactly friendly. This giant started destroying everything in his path. He walked through the town, and his shining image literally made everyone fall to their knees. Some people were forced to look at him in admiration. Others tried to find the strength to turn away, but no one could resist his attractiveness.
I can't help but mention that this was truly a nightmare. Everything we knew about dealing with criminals wasn't helping. This wasn't a regular threat. It was a true wonder of nature. The boss of beauty wasn't just destroying buildings, he was destroying the morals of the townspeople, making them forget about the important things in life and focus only on appearances. This was dangerous for everyone because we had no idea how to fight it.
So, we had to act fast. We started gathering information on what could stop this giant of beauty. I suggested using an old trick. Sometimes too much beauty becomes inconvenient. We turned to the wise residents of the town, those who weren't so dependent on appearances. In the end, it turned out that to defeat the boss of beauty, we just needed to make him see the real, unidealized picture of the world. We decided to carry out an operation that would shatter his illusion.
We started by asking some of our friends, who weren't as attractive, but were very smart, to use mirrors and other reflective surfaces. We set a trap so that his reflection would show him something he didn't want to see. Mirrors outside, combined with reflective surfaces inside buildings, began to create optical illusions. We created such a reflection that the boss of beauty himself started doubting his own strength.
And it worked! The boss of beauty began losing his confidence. The mirrors started showing him that his appearance wasn't everything, and that there were other important things in the town. By the time he realized he couldn't control his emotions through his beauty, we took the opportunity to weaken his power. We ripped control of the town from his hands and destroyed the magic of his attractiveness.
And so, thanks to our plan, the boss of beauty stopped destroying the town. We brought him back to reality, where not only external beauty matters, but also inner qualities. This was a lesson not only for him, but also for all the townspeople. Beauty is important, of course, but it doesn't solely define who you are. We saved the town, and people began to appreciate not just appearances, but the things that truly make them strong.
Yes, we won, but I'll tell you one thing. We also need to be careful with beauty. Sometimes it can cloud the mind, but only true values will help us stay on the right path. In the end, what matters is what's inside, and our town is once again as it should be, harmonious and happily balanced.
After we destroyed her mechanisms and broke all the traps, Karen activated her final defense. She transformed into a giant right in front of us. Her entire body became enormous, and her eyes burned with evil. We knew this was our final battle. But how could we defeat such a giant Karen?
We quickly noticed that there were weak spots on her body, glowing brightly. These were clearly her vulnerabilities. But to reach those spots, we needed to distract her. We immediately realized that we had an unconventional weapon, the poop that Karen absolutely hated. It was just like her own gifts to anyone who didn't please her.
Karen started losing her confidence more and more. We saw her strength fading, and with every hit, she grew weaker. Eventually, she collapsed to the ground, unable to stand before us any longer. We defeated her, not with strength, but with persistence and teamwork. Thank you all for watching. We defeated Evil Karen. Hello, friends. It's me, Sheriff Labrador, and today we have a special episode for you.
Hi, everyone. Yes, Sheriff Labrador, I'm already excited.
Together with my loyal partner, Sheriff Dobie, we're going to tell you about the most beautiful and challenging mode in Roblox, Escape the Carnival of Horrors Obby. This mode is simply incredible.
You find yourself in a mysterious and eerie carnival, full of dangers and unexpected twists.
Let's start from the beginning. As soon as you enter the game, you're greeted by a creepy carnival, dimly lit by lanterns. Dangerous traps and evil ghost clowns patrolling the area are scattered everywhere. Your task is to avoid them at all costs.
Exactly! Do you see that red balloon? We need to follow it. In the first stage, you have to be very careful and quick to avoid getting caught by the clowns. I recommend watching your steps closely to avoid traps.
Yes, and that's just the beginning. This clown world is huge, and I think we'll be fighting this clown today. By the way, do you know the name of this clown? Write it in the comments, and whoever guesses correctly will get a heart from us on their comment.
But inside, it's full of dangerous mechanisms. You must be very attentive and keep moving to avoid getting caught in the traps.
We need to get through these rusty pipes. The main thing is not to touch the fire or fall down. We can't forget about the final part, escaping through the horror ride. This is the most challenging part, where you'll have to use all your skills and agility to reach the exit.
Friends, this mode is truly amazing. It's not only difficult, but incredibly beautiful. We are sure you'll love it. Right now, we are in the heart of the Carnival of Horrors, in the Clown's House. Just look at this grim place. We need to parkour through old, smelly pipes with a bottomless pit below us.
Yes, it's really scary. The smelly pipes are not only a test of our agility, but also a real endurance test. The smell is disgusting, but we need to focus and move forward.
Watch your step, Sheriff Labrador. If we slip, we'll fall into that bottomless pit. We must be very careful and watch each step. Let's move slowly and confidently.
Good plan, Sheriff Dobie. Do you see that narrow pipe ahead? We need to jump onto it and then move along the wall. The main thing is not to rush and keep our balance.
Great, I'm ready. Let's go, Labrador. You first. I'll cover you. This is probably one of the most difficult stages in this mode, but we'll manage, right?
Of course, Dobie. We're a team. All right, one jump, then another. Carefully, done. Now it's your turn, Dobie.
Got it. I'm coming. One jump, another. Yes, I did it. Now we need to walk along this narrow pipe. It's slippery, so hold on tight.
Of course, Dobie. We're a team. All right, one jump, then another. Carefully, done. Now it's your turn, Dobie.
Yes, it's a real nightmare. These saws spin so fast that one mistake can cost us our lives. We need to move very carefully and precisely calculate our actions.
Look, Dobie. The saws move in a specific pattern. If you watch closely, you can catch the moment when they stop for a split second. That's when we need to dash through.
I made it too. Can you see me? Wow! Look at this beautiful amusement park. Ferris wheel, roller coasters, and much more.
Now we're escaping from the scariest clown in this carnival. He wants to turn us into his dolls, and we urgently need to find a way to escape. Look ahead. There's a Ferris wheel. It's our chance to get to the top.
The clown is still after us. Let's go, Labrador. We can do this.
Yes, we're at the top. What a view! You can see the whole carnival from here. The clown won't catch us here.
Whew, that was intense. But we did it, Labrador. Now we're safe.
Guys, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us likes. It's the best gift you can give us. Our animal town has always been a peaceful place, but recently we were shaken by a story connected to the amusement park. The park has always been a popular spot for family outings. However, with the arrival of a new clown, strange incidents began happening. He appeared friendly, but there was always something unusual around him. The townspeople began to complain about odd feelings and missing items. Dobie and I decided to get to the bottom of this.
From the very beginning, we noticed that the clown attracted children, but the parents looked at him with concern. We started the investigation trying to understand what was going on. In the park, we discovered strange traces and heard stories about how the clown was leading children in unknown directions. In the evening, the park closed, but some children didn't return home. Labrador and I decided to stay in the park after closing time to see what was happening.
When it got dark, the park turned into a place of shadows and suspicious sounds. We hid behind carousels and rides, observing what was going on. Soon, we saw the clown leading a group of children. They seemed hypnotized, following him without a single word. We cautiously followed them until they reached an old, abandoned tent that hadn't been used in a long time.
The tent was locked, but somehow the clown managed to open it. We carefully approached, trying not to give ourselves away. When we peeked inside, we saw a stage with bright lights. The clown started his performance, but it wasn't an ordinary show. He used strange tricks and magical illusions that seemed to mesmerize the children. We realized that the clown was using some dark magic to control them.
We decided to act quickly. I distracted the clown, pretending I wanted to see the show up close, while Dobie took the children out of the tent. The clown, noticing our presence, became angry. His face twisted into a malicious grimace, and he tried to stop us. But we were already prepared and knew what to do. We used flashlights to blind him and escorted the children to the park's exit.
We led the children to a safe place and called for backup. The clown tried to escape, but he didn't get far. When our colleagues arrived, we arrested him and started the investigation. It turned out that this clown was a former magician who had lost his job and decided to use his skills for sinister purposes. Thanks to our efforts, the park became a safe place for family outings again. Labrador and I returned to the station, knowing that we had done an important job. We told the townspeople this story so they would know that even in the safest place, dangers can be hiding. But together, we can overcome any difficulties and protect our town.
Recently, a new clown appeared in our town. He was so funny that he immediately became popular. Everywhere he went, people laughed until they cried. He performed street shows, visited people's homes, and entertained both children and adults. Everything seemed fine, but something wasn't right. Dobby and I started noticing that after the clown's visits, people's belongings went missing. At first, it was small things, but each day the number of disappearances grew. We decided to take control of the situation and figure out what was happening.
We began to keep an eye on this clown, but he was so sneaky that none of our observers could catch him in the act. He would go into homes, show his tricks, and everyone seemed to forget what had happened. But as soon as the clown left, valuable items were always missing, from watches to jewelry. Sheriff Labrador suggested we find out what was going on, and soon we were in the middle of an investigation. We decided to set up a trap.
One night, Dobby and I decided to keep an eye on the clown in person. We put on masks and went into one of the houses where the clown frequently showed up. When he arrived, we began to watch his actions closely. At first, everything went as usual. He entertained everyone with his jokes and tricks. But suddenly, during one of his tricks, we noticed his hand quickly slip behind his back and disappear into the host's pocket.
That was the moment of truth. Labrador and I realized that this wasn't just a coincidence. We started watching his hands, and soon we discovered that he was really stealing things while everyone was laughing or distracted by his show. He skillfully used his tricks to secretly take small valuables. We decided to catch him red-handed.
When the clown left, we immediately went to the house to check what had gone missing. And, as strange as it seemed, valuable items had indeed disappeared. We gathered our strength and decided to act. The next day, we met with the clown again, but this time, he didn't know we were preparing to expose him. When he started his new trick, we quietly surrounded him.
The clown tried to avoid us, but we already knew everything. He realized his trick had been uncovered and tried to escape, but Labrador was faster. We caught him, and it turned out that this clown was a master of pickpocketing, using his popularity to steal from trusting townspeople. After we arrested him, it was revealed that he was a thief, hiding behind the mask of a cheerful clown. But now, thanks to us, he would no longer be able to cause trouble in our town.
That's how we exposed this funny clown. He thought he could trick us, but it didn't work out that way. This time, the jokes were over, and now all the town's residents know that we don't joke with anyone who tries to deceive them. Dobby and I are back to patrolling, knowing that even the most amusing incidents can hide dangerous secrets.
When we returned to the station, we told the townspeople how important it is to stay vigilant, even when it seems like everything around is 100% safe. The clown thought his tricks would go on forever, but it turned out differently. Labrador and I are proud that we acted in time, and now the townspeople can laugh again without fear.
Officer Dobby and I are on the roller coaster, and right before us stands a massive carnival city. We're not just here for fun. We're keeping everything under control. But right in front of us, there's that terrifying clown.
Well, friends, the time has come to say goodbye. We hope you enjoyed riding with us on these roller coasters, following our adventures, and of course, staying alert. Until next time, and may your carnivals always be filled with joy, not threats.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to keep an eye on your surroundings, because even in the brightest places, mysteries can be hiding. Hi, friends. As you can see, we're at school, which means today we have to escape from Mr. Stinky.
Hello, everyone. But first, we need to get out of the classroom. Crazy Mr. Stinky put our picture on the board and wrote that we're newbies. We need to prove him wrong.
Of course we will. We are real sheriffs. Let's activate the fire alarm and escape before anyone notices.
Sheriff Labrador, difficult trials await us ahead. We need to save our strength for the final boss battle.
Oh, it seems he was nearby all this time. Stealth is not an option. Let's run!
He's looking at us with such a scary smile, he's about to catch up. We need to speed up.
What a huge belly he has. Is he really asleep? Maybe he just wants to scare us or play. Perhaps he's curious about how we'll handle his trials.
Haha, why did he fall asleep? Well, better not to risk it.
Someone tried to escape and stepped into this strange green liquid. I hope it's not acid. Let's climb into the vent. Hold your breath so you don't choke on the dust.
Now we'll jump through the parkour. You're a pro at this, so I'm sure we'll pass without mistakes. Looks like he's awake. Hope he doesn't attack now.
Look how creepy this looks. Why did he drill a hole in the wall to spy on us instead of installing a camera?
Brr, very creepy. Maybe he thinks this will scare us and we won't be able to continue.
Such things don't scare us. We face scarier things. We need to ignore him and focus on the goal. How do we open the gates?
Maybe these two buttons will open them. The question is, do we need to press them simultaneously or separately?
It will be unfair if the door only opens together. We'll find out soon when we press the second button.
How much money and time was spent on creating all these trials? He's really crazy. Why does he need all this? To watch kids cry?
Great. The door opened. I think he spent about $1 million in 10 years on all this. But we haven't seen the other trials yet, and they are probably more difficult. Oh, this trial looks familiar. Maybe he wants to learn our weaknesses for the final battle.
Now we need to focus on not getting hit by the laser. I don't understand how lasers can disintegrate things. I've only seen those used to play with cats.
There are powerful lasers used in material processing. Their power allows cutting through various objects.
Got it, thanks. Look, this guy is offering to take a secret path. Should we trust him?
If it's a trap, they'll just kill us and we'll respawn. Plus, I'm curious to see what's there.
It's a giant hanging platform. Maybe there will be a boss battle. Why did this guy say it's a secret path?
All we can do is press the red button. Okay, the button summoned the boss. He looks like Mr. Stinky, but with pipe legs and a large gear. Maybe Mr. Stinky likes steampunk and made a robotic copy of himself.
Considering the technology, it's possible. But Mr. Stinky is too old to master such technology. Although, given his madness, anything can be expected from him.
He has almost no health left. The main thing is not to get too close so he doesn't hit us with his hat.
Oh, that was exhausting. He's too strong or we have too weak weapons.
All right, what's next? We defeated him and we got nothing. What nonsense. Maybe they'll at least leave us the weapons. Oh, I accidentally jumped. No big deal, we'll respawn. This guy just tricked us. He probably wanted to laugh, but something went wrong. Did you notice that these books have spikes? It's dangerous.
And those spiked balls, they look like viruses. I hope we didn't get sick.
We almost ran into a spiked mace. Oh no, it's yellow-toothed Larissa. Grab your weapon and shoot her in the eye. She looks like Mrs. Stinky because she has terrible breath.
I hope she at least takes a shower. She has horrible makeup and a wart on her face. Now it's clear. Mr. and Mrs. Stinky are dating. Interesting.
Hooray! The second boss is defeated. Dobie and I were patrolling the town when we received a distress call. Professor Tailstein, a well-known scientist and inventor, had created cyborgs meant to assist the townsfolk in their daily tasks. But it soon became clear that something had gone wrong. Instead of helping, the cyborgs began to act aggressively. Dobie and I realized we couldn't ignore this. Tailstein always had strange ideas, but we never expected something like this.
Yeah, at first everything seemed like just another normal project. The cyborgs were helping with cleaning, delivering goods, ensuring safety. But soon reports came in that the robots were breaking equipment, scaring people, and in some areas, even attacking residents. Sheriff and I immediately realized something wasn't right. These machines were too smart for simple tasks, and it seemed like they were starting to plan something. We went to the professor to figure out what had happened.
When we arrived at the professor's place, he was in a panic. He claimed that his program was supposed to work as intended, and that the robots couldn't have gone out of control. He said he didn't understand how it happened, but his invention was clearly no ordinary one. We inspected the lab and quickly realized that something wasn't right. We started suspecting that someone might have interfered with the system and introduced a virus that altered the behavior of these robots. Time was running out and we needed to act fast.
The professor told us that the central control module, which controlled all the cyborgs, was located in an underground lab. It was a secured area, and getting in wouldn't be easy. But Sheriff and I knew that without accessing it, we wouldn't be able to stop the cyborgs. We began planning how to break into the lab, knowing that many dangers awaited us along the way. If we didn't succeed, the town would be destroyed.
We entered the lab and immediately faced our first obstacle. A few cyborgs were patrolling the corridors. We tried to move quietly, but one of the robots spotted us and activated the alarm. More cyborgs appeared right away and started moving toward us. We had to act fast. Dobie and I fought back in sync, but every step was getting harder. The cyborgs weren't backing down.
As soon as we passed the first corridor, we realized our task was only getting more difficult. New patrols were waiting for us at every corner, and if we weren't careful, we'd be spotted. I suggested using some devices to temporarily disable their sensors. We managed to pull it off, but time was running out, and we knew that every second counted. We kept moving toward the main hall, where the module we needed to disable was located.
When we reached the central hall, we were met with a real cyber barrier. Several cyborgs surrounded the control module, guarding it. It was a full-on battle, but we knew we couldn't lose. We attacked from different sides, but one of the robots triggered the defense system. At that moment, we had to act quickly. While they blocked the entrance, I searched for a way to disable all their signals. In our town of animals, there's nothing scarier than a school night. It all began when we received a strange call. In the school where the youngest residents study, all the lights went out. At first, it seemed like a simple power outage, but as soon as Dobie and I arrived, we knew something was wrong. The darkness in the corridors was so thick that we could barely make out the path. There were no students to be found, but strange sounds echoed as if someone was wandering the dark halls.
Sheriff and I decided to investigate the school. As we walked through the first floors, we noticed strange marks on the walls, as if someone had been hiding or running in a hurry. We made our way to the old basement, a place no one usually ventured into. The school was quite old, and the basement had always been surrounded by rumors. They said that many years ago, mysterious experiments were conducted down there. At that moment, Sheriff and I began to feel an unsettling sense of anxiety building up. We moved forward, trying to locate the source of the strange sounds.
When we descended into the basement, the air was heavy, and the darkness felt almost alive. We discovered an old, dusty mirror that had once stood in one of the classrooms. It was covered in grime, but when we cleaned it, something strange reflected back at us. It wasn't our reflections, but silhouettes that resembled students, with empty eyes. We quickly backed away from the mirror, and at that moment, we heard the basement doors creak open. We turned around and saw a shadow begin to move down the corridor.
We rushed toward the exit, but the doors were locked. It was at that moment that we realized this wasn't just a security system malfunction. The shadows were moving faster, and there were more of them. We tried to find another way out, but every corridor led us back to the basement. Suddenly, one of the shadows began speaking in our voices. That's when we understood. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone or something had brought this place to life.
Dobie and I desperately tried to escape, but the more we moved, the more creaking footsteps we heard behind us. We decided to use some old school equipment to disable the electrical systems. As soon as we did, the shadows started to disappear, and silence returned. Once we were outside, we realized this wasn't just a malfunction. We had saved the town, but the dark forces in the school were still lingering.
When we told the townspeople the story, many started looking at the school with suspicion. But despite everything, the shadows had vanished, and in that moment, we understood sometimes even the darkest corner can be a hidden test for those who are brave enough to face what they don't understand. Sheriff and I returned to work, but that evening, when night fell, neither of us could bring ourselves to go back. We knew this school wasn't just a building, it was a place where dark secrets hide.
Well, friends, we did it! We conquered that evil teacher! I, Labrador, want to thank you for joining us on this adventure. Remember, with us, you can chase down any problem and beat it.
See you, friends. We're always on guard.
Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Our battle will be legendary. This day started like any other. The city was waking up, and Dobie and I were going through the morning reports. But soon, the peace was broken by a call. The dispatcher's voice was tense. There were reports of strange events at the central hospital. Patients were disappearing. Nurses spoke of a mysterious sheriff who had taken control of the institution. And the strangest part, this sheriff looked exactly like me. Dobie and I exchanged glances. This couldn't be a coincidence. I had heard stories about doppelgangers, but I never thought I would encounter one myself. We got into the car and headed to the hospital.
When we arrived, the hospital looked deserted. The large glass doors were locked, and behind them, we could only see dim, flickering lights. No patients, no staff, as if the whole place had been abandoned. Posters with Labrador's face hung on the walls, but something was off about them. His eyes looked cold, and his smile menacing. We cautiously stepped inside. The hallways were dark, the lights flickered, and the air smelled of chemicals. Cameras were everywhere, watching our every move. We had to figure out what was going on.
We moved forward carefully, scanning our surroundings. I could feel that we were being watched. Suddenly, a nurse appeared from around the corner. He looked terrified and whispered that we had to leave while we still could. According to him, the other sheriff had locked all the patients and staff in the basement and had taken over the main office. This was a challenge we couldn't ignore. We headed for the staircase leading down, but as soon as we opened the door, the sound of footsteps filled the corridor. Several guards in black uniforms with patches bearing my own emblem emerged from the shadows. They didn't look friendly.
We knew there would be no talking our way out of this. The guards lunged at us, but we were ready. Labrador threw his baton at one of them, while I used my strength to shove another straight into the wall. The rest hesitated, giving us the chance to break through to the basement. We rushed down the narrow stairs. The air grew heavier. It smelled of age and metal. Rusty pipes lined the walls. Water dripped from the ceiling. Soon, we reached a locked door. Behind it, we heard muffled voices. People were inside.
The door was secured with a massive lock. I glanced around and spotted a toolbox. Grabbing a crowbar, I swung hard at the lock. It gave way with a screech. The door burst open, revealing dozens of frightened but unharmed patients and doctors. They ran toward us, begging to be saved from the false sheriff. I told them to stay put until we dealt with the main threat. We had to find my double.
We climbed to the top floor, where the main office was located. The door was slightly ajar, and we stepped inside. There, in the center of the spacious office, stood my partner's evil twin. He looked exactly like Labrador, except for his eyes. They were dark, lifeless, like empty voids. A strange badge hung from his chest, glowing with a faint red light. He looked at us and smiled. We realized this wasn't just an imposter. This was something inhuman. He didn't speak, but his gaze made it clear he wouldn't let us leave so easily.
He attacked! I barely managed to dodge as his paw slammed into the desk, leaving a deep dent. This me was stronger than any ordinary beast. Dobie tried to sneak up behind him, but with a single motion, the doppelganger flung him aside. I had to find a way to stop him. I noticed that the badge on his chest glowed brighter whenever he attacked. Maybe that was the source of his power.
I understood what Labrador was thinking. We had to remove that badge. I lunged forward, pretending to go for his face, while Labrador leaped from above, grabbed the badge, and yanked it with all his strength. A dull crack echoed through the room. The false sheriff froze. Then his body began to tremble. Awareness flickered in his eyes before he simply dissolved into the air, leaving behind only the metallic badge, now dull and lifeless.
As soon as he vanished, the hospital began to change. The lights brightened, the cameras stopped tracking us, and the eerie silence was replaced by the sounds of voices. We knew the spell or technology that kept people in fear had been broken. Doctors and patients emerged from the basement, cautiously looking around. They were free. We knew it was over.
Once everything calmed down, we stepped outside. The sky was already lightening. Night was over. I looked at Labrador and smirked. We had seen a lot, but nothing like this before. But before we could get into the car, a new call came in. The dispatcher reported strange occurrences happening in the city again. We exchanged glances and started the engine.
The corridor trembled with each impact. Every door concealed the unknown, and we had no idea where the next attack would come from. The lights flickered, strange noises echoed from the ventilation shafts, and the scent of antiseptic mixed with something far more sinister. I could feel it. My doppelganger was toying with us, luring us into a trap. We reached the operating room. The massive metal doors slid open slowly, revealing a chamber filled with surgical instruments hanging from the ceiling and tables draped in dusty sheets. And in the center of it all, he stood, my dark reflection, wearing a twisted grin and staring with cold, empty eyes. He didn't attack immediately. He was waiting, savoring our hesitation. That's when I realized this wasn't just a copy. He could read my thoughts, anticipate my every move. This was me, stripped of conscience, devoid of principles, without mercy.
I saw Labrador freeze for a moment, assessing the situation. The double looked just like him, but something was deeply wrong. He moved like a shadow, his presence felt unnatural, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to pierce through the air itself. And then he struck. His movements were lightning fast, his attacks precise. I tried to intervene, but he dodged effortlessly, predicting my every action. It felt like a nightmare, the kind where your enemy is always faster, always ahead. We tried every technique we knew, but he countered them with ease, as if he had already seen the battle play out in his mind. The only way to win was to outsmart him, to make him believe in a false move.
I feigned exhaustion, letting my body slump as if I were giving up. For just 1 second, he smirked. And that was all we needed. At that moment, Dobie lunged forward, grabbing a surgical lamp and blasting him with blinding light. My double flinched, his expression shifting from arrogance to pure terror. That was my chance. I struck hard, and he staggered back, his eyes widening as he realized he had lost. A horrible screech filled the room as his body began to dissolve, leaving only a flickering outline of his former self. The hospital trembled as if reality itself was collapsing. We barely made it outside before the entire building shuddered and started to fade away. It had all been an illusion, a construct of darkness, but now it was gone.
When it was over, I turned to look at Labrador. He was exhausted, but victorious. We had won. Another day, another rescue. But as we walked away, a chill crept up my spine. For a split second, in the reflection of the hospital's glass doors, I swore I saw him.
As we stepped outside, the hospital behind us began to vanish, dissolving like mist into the night air. It felt like waking from a nightmare that had finally ended. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Dobie patted me on the shoulder, a silent confirmation that we had done everything we could. But something gnawed at me. I knew my double was gone, but was he truly gone? His smirk, his movements, they had been too real to simply disappear. Questions swirled in my mind, but for now, there were no answers.
I glanced around. The city carried on as usual, unaware that just moments ago, we had battled an entity that could have destroyed not only us, but the very fabric of reality itself. I wanted to say something reassuring, but before I could, the dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio. Another call, another nightmare. I sighed, exchanging a knowing look with Labrador. Looked like rest wasn't in our near future. We jumped into the car and headed toward the next anomaly.
I drove through the dark city streets, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the hospital. In the rearview mirror, for a brief moment, I saw a familiar face. My face, but with that same sinister smirk.